Yeah.
Yeah, for those that don't know me, Andy McGivern, part of the AGM team. What you'll probably see today is we've got a couple of us that are going to talk through some of the slides. So we're kind of representing the planning team, the BI team, and to cut long story short, we have created a kind of integrated, connected planning team within AGEM that have been focusing over probably like the last 12 months on basically using a new technology to help us kind of boost the planning capabilities that the NHS have. So, Claude, is it okay if we jump onto the next slide? And then, Alison, I know you're quite close to some of these initial slides. Would it be okay if you just talk us through where we're at with them?
Yeah, no, happy to, and thank you very much, Andy. And it's great to see a good set of colleagues here. Please use the chat as we go through. I'd love to see your questions and thoughts as we go through this. We're a team of 4 CSUs working together as a virtual single organisation now. So very exciting opportunity. And we've got some really great assets and great capabilities that we deploy across the NHS, from national bodies like NHS England, which we work very, very closely with, through to ICBs, and we cover all 42 ICBs, through to all the NHS trusts and collaboratives and primary care. And one of the things Andy didn't mention, and I'm sure we'll be happy to answer questions on, is that we also support most local authorities with a lot of the BI sort of tools and things. So we've got a great opportunity, I think, to leverage some of our knowledge, intelligence and data assets to capitalise on that and create what we've called an operational planning platform to integrate and help you make better decisions. So if we just move forward, thank you, Claude. I'll whiz through these quite quickly just to illustrate some of it. So all of these agenda, we've put in the quick 30-minute sessions. Each 30-minute session just looks at a different angle of connected planning. But if you are interested in any aspect of connected and integrated planning, just give us a bell, just give us a message, and we'll come and do a one-to-one with you anyway, and just talk to you a little bit more about it. So, but thank you very much for attending today. So let's just move through. And the theme today is to look a little bit at workforce, and we're going to skim very rapidly through that, but there's a lot more we can tell on that. So the first thing is just to set the scene on connected resource management and connected planning. Thanks, Claude. We'll keep going through these quite quickly. So if you click on, hopefully it'll all come up that. Just keep clicking till it all come up. So I thought I'd change that. Doesn't look like that's changed. But so what we do here is connect over on the left-hand side our main integrated care objectives, which is outcome, value, quality of care, through to the accountability lens that we have for whether we're accountable to our individual organisational boards, to individual divisions or departments. So we have planning, which is for those various aspects, or we might have planning that we want to do across a whole pathway of care. Equally, we will want to plan for a place or a population group. So that middle section is about the accountability. Who are we accountable for to make better decisions and to plan better together and to use our resources really well? And over to the right are all the assets. And if you just keep clicking, Claude, over to the right will be all the assets that we're trying to, and the resource lens that we're trying to connect together. So today you're going to hear a little bit about how we've connected workforce through to productivity and initiatives. But obviously what we're seeking to do is integrate all of these things together dynamically, feed it with a data hub underneath all of this. So we're pooling all our data and we're connecting our data together, which drives this as a dynamic planning approach for the NHS. Thank you, Claude. Move it over if you would. Thanks. Just click on that again. Thank you. I shall change these slides in future so there isn't any of that happening. I thought I had changed it, but obviously not. So what we've built so far is a number of connected models, and at the bottom of this slide, what we're looking at is specific questions that are being asked here. So for an ambulance service, we've looked at how we can predict demand and schedule workforce better. And there's an integrated connected model, which is effectively looking at 15-minute dynamic planning of the workforce. So that's an example of answering that sort of question. Then we move over to look at things like, well, how do we connect together better activity and linking that to demand and capacity. So we've built a model here which looks at beds and community flow. We had a webinar on that, I think, 2 meetings ago, and it will be on the website, the output of that. So again, if anybody's interested in that, please let us know. We're going to touch on today a model that we've built with a partner in their A&E department, which is connecting workforce costs better and understanding agency costs. And then we've also got a model that we looked at around carbon emissions. But our master integrator model is connecting all of these things together, creating dynamic prediction and forecasting, looking at your interventions and what difference are you going to make by putting an intervention in? Are you moving those dials? And how are you aligned between all of your plans? How connected are your plans? And so you get real transparency between your workforce plan, your activity, finance plan. We don't have this manual triangulation going on, which then is done sporadically, but in reality doesn't really represent real operational decisions that are happening. So what we're very keen to do is have something that's an enterprise-wide tool that everyone is using to make better decisions. Thank you. We'll just move on and just go through the next couple of examples here. And sitting at the front of this is an assurance dashboard, which will tell you how you're doing on all of these connections. So you're going to have a sort of forecast against your plan. Are we on or off track? If you're off track or misaligned between your various planning elements, what do you need to do about that? It will help you work out what to do. It will take you to a set of tools and guidance that will then help you intervene to get back on track. We then look at things like connected planning. Do you have the right funding for the activity that's remaining in your plan? Is your workforce and activity plan aligned in terms of the remaining performance and activity to be delivered? And which direction is your productivity and efficiency metrics going? Are they improving, staying the same, or deteriorating effectively? And against various, we're going to touch on that in a minute. And then the big engine underneath all of this is all of those initiatives. When I talked about planning, the simple thing is you're moving from one state to another state, and in moving from that state to another, you have a set of levers that you're seeking to pull, and all of those can be described as initiatives. So what are all those initiatives? What are those changes that we're seeking to make, whether they're on the population and demand side or whether they're on better running of health and care services? What are all those initiatives that stack up to move the dials? Okay, let's move on. We're just going to, I think, just quickly take you through, and these are the different, within the toolkit that we've developed, it takes you into a sandbox where you can do scenario testing. So if your dials are moving in the wrong direction and you want to work up some future alternatives, it will help you visualize the future. So it says, what if this happens? What if we have a better intervention in the community around earlier intervention? What would that do in terms of demand and deflection, for example? So it helps you work through those alternatives, and it also helps you work through on the right hand side what would happen if we put different technologies in, or digital technologies in. What would happen on the workforce if we changed our workforce team in some way? And it helps you visualize the impact of those scenarios. Thanks, Claude.
Alison, can I just jump in on that?
Yes, please jump in. Please jump in, yeah.
So, Alison's described almost like that forward view, if we change X, how would that look going down the line? I think one of the real benefits that we've actually seen is almost like a goal-seeking approach. So rather than say, if I want to change my staff to 5 people, what would the activity be? You can work it around the other way. So just using beds as an example, if I want my occupancy rate to be 92%, what would that mean for my finance, my activity, my workforce? So it's not just about that forward view. You can actually put your goal in there and it will retrospectively calculate through and almost give you a suggested idea what that should look like.
That's exactly right. Yeah, thanks, Andy. And I think the more that we can help in the future, this is version 0.1, as I say. As we start developing this, we're going to start using big data to be far more intelligent and predictive about that. So not only have you got your goal seeking, which everyone will agree these are the goals we want to, it will also help feed to predict what your performance and forecast is against that through that data integration layer. And that's what's visualized here is sort of this data integration and data hub. often, and please jump in, Andy, at this point, often I'm asked the question about, well, what about FDP? You haven't got FDP on that slide here. Well, FDP obviously is taking the national data flows, and there'll be a whole set of applications sitting around FDP, and it's a great initiative, 100%. But the FDP has got quite a lot of data flows missing, which are needed in operational planning. And for operational planning, you need local data. There's lots of local data flows. Primary care isn't in FDP. And for sure, you're going to need some of that in here to make sure you've got that real end-to-end planning. Finance isn't in FDP, workforce isn't in. So I think the way to think about it is it will draw from and sit in and draw and work with FDP. FDP is a fantastic data hub, but you need to supplement it with other data. Thank you. You may want to answer that. I don't think there's any more to say on that really, but let me just whiz through these because I'm very conscious I want to hand to Andy, back to Andy in a second, and you can pick it up then, Andy, if that's all right. So as I say, we're just building this assurance page, and it'd be great to have if anybody wants to work with me on this, I'm really keen to get people's views really about what would a good assurance page look like for integrated connected planning. What are the KPIs that you look for? So if you imagine this coming up and there's different roles in planning roles. So I'm a finance planner, I'm a workforce planner, I'm an operations planner. I might be, a directorate lead. So you've all got different roles in here. And when you come onto your planning page, you want to know what I should be doing really. What action do I need to take? So that's what the assurance page is all about. It's assurance and action. So let's move through and just give an example here. I'm just going to work through. We have got this built actually, but it's a bit easier to do slides. Thanks, Claude, if you move us on. Thanks very much. We'll move on, I think, from that. Thank you very much, because we're just going to talk a little bit more. Let's keep moving, because I've talked a little bit. So first of all, at a very simple level, what we're aiming to do, and we have done actually, is to link the workforce plan and activity plan to develop what's called implied productivity. And that gives you your activity either per type of member of staff role or across a whole team and division or organisation. And the more that you can roll this up, the more powerful it is in terms of that implied productivity. So let's move through to the next slide. Thank you. And what we do, one before, thank you. And what we would do then is look at that implied productivity and compare it to a target that you want to achieve. So that target productivity could be through Model Hospital, and we'll come on to that in a minute and show you some of that. And we can build that into and have built that into a benchmarking point, or it could be your own local decision about what you believe is the right productivity that you want to aim for. And if you then compare your current productivity with your desired productivity, that gives you a movement that you need to make. And if you move to that level, does it impact your workforce or does it impact your activity? And what do I need to do to hit that new target? So in this example, we're going from A to B. What do we need to do in order to hit that? So just moving on to that next slide. And obviously, in order to hit that, you would need to develop an initiative, as I say. So the initiative then features in the platform, and it could be a whole range of things. So it could be deploying deploying digital tools. It could be streaming Acuity to different roles within the team, so you get better capacity, a more diverse roles. So I've just put in the screenshot some work we did, which was about diversity of roles in haematology, I think it was. So you're looking at your multidisciplinary team and getting a greater scope of tasks for each role. And obviously diversify the team. You've got passporting of staff between teams as an initiative. You've got shared specialist teams, moving capacity between teams, or sharing across multiple organisations, your specialist workforce. All of those things, and I've just put a smattering of examples, really. They're simply just examples. All of that can have an increase on your capacity and productivity. So that's what really has to be captured in this platform as an example initiative. Thanks, Claude, if you move us forward. So here's a very simple sort of Mickey Mouse example, really. So this is an organisation, foundation, trust. We're looking at, in this example, we're looking at a particular role, which is advanced practitioner. We've got an activity volume for the team around that. And therefore, we've got a workforce figure for finance, which has got 575. And we've got a workforce calculated workforce required for the productivity of 585. So clearly on our, if you imagine our assurance dashboard coming up, it would say, hang on a minute, you've got a difference here between these two figures. What are you going to do about it? Because you've got finance saying one figure, you've got productivity saying another. So it asks you to have a look at that, come back and tell us if it's right or wrong. So next screen, please, we'll bring it through. We create an initiative in this example. So in this example, we're going to put some money into the pot and we're going to put more workforce in so that we increase the whole time equivalents and therefore bring the productivity back in balance. Next slide. And we're just going to basically do that. So we've created an initiative in here, put some budget in there, etc. Next slide. And this is then approved. So we have an approval screen. So basically it goes through, your workforce director approves it, your ops director approves it, your finance person approves it, whoever approves it. And it all goes through and say, tick, tick, tick. Yes, that's what we want to do. We all agree it. Next slide, thanks. It then goes through and is all of this is all approving your initiative. Thanks, we'll just keep going through that. And then the planned adjustments are then reflected back in. So if that initiative is accepted, we've got a read write back into the individual plans. So it then goes back into your finance plan and back into your workforce plan. Thanks. Keep going. And this then is showing that writing back. So at the end of all of that, we end up with an alignment. So the workforce now is aligned. So the workforce is saying that you've got 594 and the productivity is saying, yes, we agree that your productivity assumption is now aligned and that you need 594 and you've got that in place. So that's just a really simple way of explaining it as to how we get the connections between initiatives, workforce, finance and productivity. But Andy's going to talk a little bit more in a second and just bring it more to life. I think I've come to the end of mine, I suspect. Thank you. Just move it forward. Andy may want to pick up at this point, but these are the productivity measures, as you know, in Model Hospital. I know these are being worked on. We're closely connected in with NHSE on this, so we know that they are being worked on. The main thing we look at is implied productivity and benchmarks. That's the main thing that sort of drives it. So let me just hand over to Andy and he can talk to you in more detail about the case study that we've got for you here today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. It does feel like we're on a bit of a whistle-stop tour of this one. I know 30 minutes is quite tight just because there is so much kind of information that sits behind this. Dead quick before I get onto the case study, Alison kind of referenced one of those technology slides before. We have had to be very careful that that this is kind of a technology that can integrate into current tech stacks. It's not something that sits alongside. So there was reference to being able to distribute the kind of data that comes out of this and the analytics into your own local kind of reporting systems as well. And then just picking up Mike's comments in the chat as well. I think when we talked about primary care data, we have got a couple of models that are built around demand and capacity. And so the ambition that we've got is if we can kind of almost put a kind of pop health approach on this, that we can then have that forward view of what demand would be, not over the next 2-6 weeks, but 2 to 5 years as well. So it was the PHN type data, not the kind of stats that GPs have as their throughput on the dashboards. I just wanted to really quickly touch on one of the actual projects that we have worked on. So although we've got slides and screenshots, and there is actually a video in this as well, this is based on a real life organization, but we have kind of de-anonymized the data and we've synthesized it as well. So it's not a customer's data, but it is based on the work that we did with a real customer. So yeah, dead quick, I'm sure this sentence will probably resonate with a number of people on the call today, but a long story short, we were working with, predominantly it was an FT, so it was an acute provider, but we were working alongside the ICB in this as well. This is their problem statement. They needed better information basically to control the costs that were going through their A&E departments. So mainly the problem statement revolved around bank and agency staff. Again, just to give you a bit of a flavour, the monthly spend was somewhere in the region of 300k. So, you know, one of the lines I've got later on, it kind of says that something like 33% of their pay costs were actually driven from bank and agency, when compared to, I think, a national average of about 12%. So you can kind of see there's an area that needs to be investigation. The tool that we've tried to build help them get underneath the skin of what does that mean, and from a productivity perspective, how could things change if different scenarios and initiatives were played into it. Claude, are you okay to jump on to the next slide? Yeah, so this is more the general approach. Alison's talked through some of the slides, but we had a number of workshops with the organisations. It was really good to see, because we did actually manage to kind of create quite a lot of energy. You could see people kind of recognise this as a kind of problem that they have to wrestle with on a daily basis. And I think there was an element of therapy that came through some of these workshops. So we ended up managing to collect something like 30 odd specific user requirements. You know, and when I say user requirements, they were really laser focused. You know, I've got this particular problem. I need to see an answer that comes through on a Tuesday so I can make decision X with it on a Wednesday. And then from that, we were able to kind of build out a solution that basically reflects the questions that they have asked, but also gave a kind of measure statement to say there's a success factor. We did integrate, as Alison's talked about, we've got workforce data, finance data, and activity data. So it's not plumbing lots of spreadsheets in, it was connecting back to source systems, so that we were able to kind of have a weekly update, a weekly refresh, and then through the technology itself, it gave that governance assurance of passing that through to the right people. I think the big bit for me is that bottom line. So by bringing all these different plans together and really understanding the relationship between those plans, you could start to see problem areas that were due to arise in the future. So it's not just about saying what's today's position, because the predictive analytics plays into things like your activity forecast. You know, we have staffing establishments that know when staffing are coming online in the future. By marrying the two things up, you were able to see, almost like if nothing changed, the productivity effect and the differences that would make. Are you okay to jump on to the next slide? Yeah, again, this is a duplication of one of the slides, but I think when we talk about implied productivity, it's not just one overarching measure. I think the ability of having, you know, detailed staff lists by grade, by job role, by function, you're able to almost pick and choose what productivity measure you wanted to look at. So you could look at it to say, well, if I look at all of my A&E staff, what would be the throughput? And then you could drill down into different layers. So what's my consultant one? I think that links through to some of the model hospital metrics as well. It just takes it a step further. And again, the view here gives you that forward view of the predictions. Are you okay to go on to the next slide, Claude? Yeah, and again, you know, I think this is one of the elements that people need to kind of get A, confidence from, and B, laser vision on why we're actually doing some of these things. So we did run this as a proof of concept, and we are doing further work to make sure that we can actually track these visible benefits, but we tried to break them down just into qualitative and quantitative. So again, some of the things that you don't really call out, but that controlled process, the planning, you know, Alison mentions that assurance route. You know, you have got the visibility of what everyone's agreeing to. You've got audit logs of who's changing what, and you are able to communicate at a different level that we're used to be honest. So one of the qualitative benefits we saw was people actually talk about what we're going to do in the future. They don't argue over what the numbers will be. They don't argue over whether it's good or bad. They talk about the problems and how they can be solved. So by routinely putting quite a lot of this together, it was just saving tons of time. And again, I think that's mentioned some of the qualitative bits there. There's a lot of kind of reduced benefits that can come in, increased benefits that can come in from reduced time spent. I'm not going to click on this because I'm very conscious of time, but within the park, what we've done is there's a 6-minute video of what the actual system looks like. It gives you the front end, it shows you the different modules, and it delves into some of the productivity with a narrative on as well. So we thought that would be useful to include, but as I say, we're not going to go through that today. Okay, thanks, Claude.
Hello and welcome to a brief.
Oh, that wasn't my voice, but that was the narrative on the measures. Yeah, I think we're pretty much trying to wrap up now. So
Yeah.
I think some of, oh, sorry, Alison, do you want to take back over?
No, I was just going to say, just thank everyone, and please put some questions. We've sort of run a little bit out of time now, but Andy and I are happy to answer any questions that you've got in the chat for sure. And if anybody would like to contact us, if we just go to the last, we've got some contact names. Hopefully, and you can look at the previous webinars on YouTube. We'll make sure this one's on there as well. And we've got some more coming up. So next week is place-based community services, and then we have got our overall master integrator, which talks much more about the whole system sort of planning piece, and then we finish off with the carbon planning. So please join us for any of those. We'd love to have you there. But if anybody wants to contact us, we'll just do a one-to-one team-to-team meeting, and just talk you through a little bit more in terms of the platform and what we've developed so far. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you at the future webinars, and happy to pick up in the background. Thank you. Thank you so much.